what you just described is what pulled you through that tunnel was that goal and that promise, right? Like you had this purpose. You were driven by a purpose and you never buried, even though life and we're all human and we all have our down moments, you never forgot that purpose, right? And that purpose guided you through. And that's the same for all of us. If we have a goal and a purpose, that's what pulls us through the tough times, right?
Welcome to Beneath the Surface. I'm your host, DeJay Lester. This is a show where we go beyond the headlines, beyond the highlights, and beyond the labels to uncover stories that shape who we become. Every conversation is rooted in resilience, growth, and the moments that define us. Because every person has a story, and there's always more beneath the surface. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Beneath the Surface. I'm your host, DeJay Lester. Today, I have a special guest with me today. This is someone that played an integral part in my journey when I got to Snow College. As I try to find myself as somebody that stood by me, helped me, molded me, shaped me, gave me advice, feedback, and just somebody who's just like a family brother, mentor, role model. Coach Maughan, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your coaching history and your coaching journey?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Britt Maughan. Football coach for 20 plus years at the collegiate level. I did a little bit of high school ball to start and a little bit of high school ball at the end and college in between. Where I met DeJay was Snow College. I worked a little bit at the University of Utah and Idaho State and Adams State. And then Broken Arrow High School is where I finished coaching. And now I currently work as an assistant principal over here in the Broken Arrow public school system in Oklahoma. So moved around a little bit, Utah, Idaho, Florida, all these different parts of Colorado, and now here in Oklahoma. So
Thanks for sharing that insight, man. Like I said, yeah, it's been a journey for sure, most definitely. You know, I could see the passion you've had and just all the places you've gone and the impact you've made all around, right? So can you talk to some of the listeners and tell us what inspired you to become a coach?
this is kind of I don't know if it's different. Most coaches find their motivation in different places, but I served for my church a mission in South America for 2 years. And when I got home, I was like, that was such a fulfilling experience. I wanted to do something to help people, right? And so I'm like, whatever I do, my passion is how can I help people? Right. And so it was started out as a winding road. I started out thinking maybe I'll be a teacher. Then I got into the juvenile justice and counseling. And then ultimately, I felt like football was the best place for me to help people because there were so many young men that needed guidance and I could have a little fun too at the same time. Where those other jobs, there's a little more work and not as much fun.
Yeah.
Football became kind of like how I could help people and have fun at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, thanks. Did you end up, you play sports in high school, correct?
I did. I was one of those early bloomers, like 8th, 9th grade was my peak, right? Played all 4 sports and every year a sport went away. And my senior year I played football and track and, I was decent. I had my opportunities leaving school, not big offers or anything like that, but it was more of I decided to go on a mission. And when I got home off that mission, I decided to jump into coaching right off the bat. And so played football, track, a little bit of everything really up until 10th, 11th grade.
How'd you end up at Snow College then, coaching wise?
Well, that was crazy too, because like I said, initially when I got home off my mission, I was supposed to go play at Snow for Coach Coburn. And my brother was there at the time. And I ended up like, hey man, I'm too out of shape. I need a little extra time to get into shape. And it ended up morphing into me saying, oh, I'll just coach at my local high school or I'll coach at the local junior high. And then it morphed into coaching. And so when I spoke to him again, he was like, well, why don't you figure out a way to come and coach down at Snow? And so after about 2-3 years, I ended up down there coaching with him, Coach Coburn. And the connection initially was when I played against him in high school. And then I was supposed to play for him at Snow. And then eventually he's like, well, if you just want to come coach, come down here and coach. And that's how I got down there.
Yeah, that's great. That's a crazy story, man. That's it. Life is always painted, always like twists and turns. You know what I mean? To see how people got to where they got to, thanks for sharing that story for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think made Snow College different from other programs?
I think junior college wise, it was like it was steeped in tradition and like there was like an expectation that was already established there from the previous coaches like Coach Coburn and Coach Arslanian. And so like it was really different, the fact that JUCOs usually are kind of like a transition place and there's not a lot of commitment and there's not a lot of loyalty, but Snow had that. So they had tradition and loyalty and like connection. And it's even to this day, a lot of the former players will come back and former coaches and come back and kind of reminisce and have fun down there. And that's not That is not typical of a regular junior college program. It's more of like it's transient, whereas snow is more of like a piece where people connected. And there's so many people, just the coaches on our coaching staff that you know of. I think half of us met our wives while we were coaching down there at snow.
Yeah,
And so like Ephraim was one of those places that is always near and dear to everyone's hearts that where it was a part of it.
yeah, yeah. Well, so what would you say? What was the vision of the football program when you were coaching, and then what kind of young man were you guys trying to develop beyond football?
That's a great question because I was there for almost 10 years in various roles. So, like, when I was there with you the first time, that was just getting my feet wet. Like, you were getting a brand new Coach Maughan right there. And then towards the end, when I was the head coach, I think the vision was always instilled that we wanted to make young men better. We wanted to make young men into adults that could contribute to society, that were equipped with the tools to be successful in life outside of football. And even though maybe the players didn't see it that way, that's kind of was our goal all along, was to make sure that we were growing men, so that they left there with the ability to be successful in whatever they decided they wanted to be. And I think pretty much any coach that's worth their salt, that's where they end up. You might start coaching because you love football and you have a passion for it. But at the end of the day, if you last a long time as a coach, it's because you've decided you're going to invest in people and you're going to try to find a way to make them better than they were. And at least, like Coach Coburn used to always say, leave it better than you found it. Right. And he was the guy that he kind of taught me at the beginning, like the purpose of coaching isn't necessarily winning and losing, building men that are capable of winning, and like let them take
Yeah,
care of everything else. If you
yeah,
invest in the people will take care of everything else.
yeah. And that's a good outlook and good perspective. And I know when I was in high school, Coach Porter in basketball, my basketball coach, he used to talk about
Hmm.
it all the time. Leave places better than you found it, and that's something that kind of
Yeah.
stuck with me. So kind of going to snow, hearing that from Coach Coburn was just like, the same things like, oh, okay, that's kind of got created that buy-in. You know what I mean? So what would you say? For most people don't know, we played in Ephraim. Ephraim has one stoplight.
All right. Have you been back lately? They got at least three now.
They have like three now. Okay, no, I haven't been back in a while, but we're at one stoplight. And the reason why I gave that insight is I was going to ask you, why do you think playing in Ephraim made things unique? Was a unique experience playing in Ephraim, Utah?
Well, I think it was unique because it helped focus everybody on, like, there was nothing to do but football and become a brotherhood, right?
Yeah,
And so I was there a long time. And so like I got to see the cycles, right? So the spring was that everybody would kind of argue and fight with each other and get to know each other like family. And then by the fall, everybody was working together and it provided a unique opportunity. Like if you were living in Ephraim, you were there for a purpose, right? You weren't going there to hang out, fun, and like enjoy the social life. You know what I mean? You were going to Ephraim for a reason. And because, it literally the only people in the town were the students, right? And like most of the boys in the town were the football players or the athletes, right? And
yeah,
so like I think at one point it was 3-to-1 boy or girl to boy ratio in Ephraim, right?
yeah,
And so, like, if you went to school in Ephraim, you had a reason for why you did that. And I think that helped people focus on their purpose, right? Like
yeah,
everybody, and we tried to recruit kids that wanted something else. They weren't necessarily like completely dialed into what their goal was, but they were going there because they wanted to be more than what they were. And that was kind of our hope and dream, was to bring people in that had like a desire to do something more. And whatever that ended up being, like it might change over time, but we wanted to make sure we recruited people that were motivated intrinsically, because to me, that's the biggest indicator of success. If you're intrinsically motivated to be successful, then you'll find a way, right?
yeah, yeah, most definitely.
If I'm sitting there trying to teach you what you want to be, like that's kind of hard, right? That doesn't mean it's bad, but football takes a back seat when we're still trying to figure out who we are as a person, right? Or at least knowing what kind of person we want to be. We don't always know the path. Like, man, I never thought I was going to be a football coach for as long as I was until I attached my purpose to it, right?
Yeah,
And I don't, and I, that was kind of my third and fourth choice when I first started getting into like professions. Right. And same thing with you is like, you've worked through different situations and you kind of learn as you go. And everybody kind of says, well, no one really told me how to do this. I'm like, I don't know if anybody really can. Everybody's got to
yeah,
figure it out on their own, you
yeah,
know? And like, I look at my life and I wish this might be going off on some different topics here, but like, I look back and the only thing I wish I would have done differently was find a mentor to like lean on. Because I was more like, I'll figure this out on my own, And if I look back over my life, I could have made my life a little bit easier by, attaching myself to some mentors and say, these are the people that I'm gonna lean on. But I was always the guy that was like, I'm gonna do everything on my own and I'll figure it out on my own. Live and die on my own. And which is good, I think, for the most part. Like 90% of the time, that's awesome. That last 10%, the extra wisdom I could have gleaned from other people might have made my path a little bit more enjoyable,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
that extra boost, you know what I mean? And I'm glad you brought that perspective up in that point. And I think a lot of athletes, I mean, some people have mentors, that's why they make it, right? And I know for me, like kind of going through the situation I went through and the problems I went through, like I was always seeking like mentors and role models and somebody to kind of just give me that blueprint, that guidance. Because football was in my first sport. And, obviously, being in Nigeria for 10 years coming back, I just started playing like literally in high school, you know what I mean? Just something I just learned on the fly. But having those mentors were very important to kind of get to where you need to be at, so I'm kind of glad you brought that up, and that's kind of shared to the listeners so they can take care of that. And
Hmm.
we'll get into recruiting here in a second. That'll be like the next thing we talk about. So as far as like traditions or memories, do you still have any that stand out today, you feel like, from snow?
From snow, there's so many, bro. That was my favorite place I ever coached.
Man,
Um, Looking back, I'm like, spent all the time I could spend there for my own personal growth, but man, that was a hard place to leave because of the memories.
yeah.
Like with the player, man, we'll never forget the bus rides, bro. We'll never forget those bus rides, right?
Man,
And at first you hate them, but by the end you're like, man, those are just
yeah,
good memories, right?
yeah,
And so whenever I talk to anybody and we reminisce, we always talk about them bus rides to Arizona.
yeah,
The sheep coming down during fall camp down the main road while we're trying to. My first time, I remember the sheep rolling down, and I get completely distracted. I'm watching the sheep roll down out the mountain, and the kids are like, "Hey, what are we doing? Like, you're supposed to be running this drill." Like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I got distracted by the sheep rolling down the street."
yeah.
Because everybody, there's a big old sheep herd, and the football field is aligned right on campus, and then all the sheep come down the mountain on the road right next to the football field every single year at the same
That's
time.
it.
And I had not experienced that until that time. And so
Yeah,
I remember that one shocked me a little bit. I mean, so many stories. I can't even, probably a lot that I probably shouldn't share, right? but there was a lot of great memories with players, and every one of those teams, man, were awesome. They were
yeah,
fun, man. Especially your guys' group. That was a great group to go
yeah.
along with and be with.
Yeah, and I think that was great too. And I think, like you said, you touched on a couple of things. My biggest thing was like, like coming out to the haka or like yeah, you know what I'm saying? The haka was something I'm like, when we first got them, like, what? And then you start getting accustomed to it, start getting like, oh, this, you know what I mean? And you start kind of
Oh
learning
yeah,
behind it and everything. Like, okay, cool. So we used to do the haka before the games. Like you said, the bus rides to like Pima, Mesa, Glendale, you know what I mean?
oh yeah,
All that, like I said, all that was just great. Like you said, and the biggest thing I felt like it was just like a brotherhood, and the biggest thing you said was the hardest thing was for you was to leave snow. And I think for me, when I went to Wyoming, that was the hardest thing for me, like the hardest pill to swallow because I played 1 year DB, then 1 year receiver, then, I got recruited into different schools, but then I went to Wyoming, then I'm a man, like the whole brotherhood, like it just was a different perspective, you know what I mean? But we'll
yeah.
get to that in a little bit. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying I agree with you. Like that,
Yeah.
it just felt different down there. Like you felt like
Yeah.
you were part of just more than just football. So
Yeah, it really was, and I think because it was from top down, from like you said, when Coach Colbert and them had a vision, and they implemented the structure and everything like that, then everybody came in and just kinda built off of that and just kinda poured their little, 2 cents in there, kinda just made the whole thing great. Everybody was looking out from each other from the winter conditions underneath the stadium with no heat, no nothing to everything,
uh,
everybody just kinda
that
bond.
little stadium, bro. That little weight room,
Yeah,
our
little
little
state.
Rocky Ford gym down there, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. So as far as recruiting goes, I was gonna say, do you remember when we first met? When I
I
first came to
do.
school?
Yep, I
What was
do.
that experience like? What was your
Well, I first saw you at a basketball game. I watched you at a basketball game up there at Layton Christian.
Yeah,
And at the time, I was the recruiting coordinator at Snow. Like I was in charge of helping recruit all the kids in. And that was the first time I saw you. Was I'm like, we got to get this guy to come play football and play. I wanted you to play corner. You wanted to play wide receiver, if I remember right. But that was kind of like my first thought. I was like, that's a dude, raw, talented, and a perfect place is Snow for this guy. And that's my first remembrance. The first thing I remember was like this dude would be awesome for Snow College.
yeah. So was that the biggest thing that kinda stood out to you? as far as like that?
Well, the thing I remember too is like your situation was like, I think at that time, that summer, we helped you. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we kind of directed you and helped you kind of get emancipated, like get on your own so you could get financial aid and do all that
Yeah.
stuff. I learned a lot with you because I ended up doing a lot of that stuff with a lot of players after because of the things that we worked on in your situation with the schooling and trying to figure out how to get you as much money as we could get you without,
Yeah, most
like with
definitely.
your situation. And so I remember talking about you getting on your own. So when you're 18, you could get all that stuff that all the financial aid to be able to move on. But that's the thing I remember the most is like I learned the most in your situation of like how to help people outside of football. I had worked a little bit in juvenile justice at that time already. I'd counseled kids in like group homes and done all those things, but I'd never worked on that kind of stuff where they're trying to move on to the next level and find their path and set their goals. Like, what can we do to provide or help give you the most opportunities or the most resources available? So I remember learning a lot about all those little things that
Yeah,
year.
yeah, and it was crazy because I mean, you said you came and watched me play basketball. Like I say, all these sports, like I don't know, soccer was my first sport, so I never really played football until like my freshman year. In the LCA, we didn't have a program. You know, what I mean, it was something to do to get my freshman year, and then so basketball was like the big sport at the school at the time, and so basketball became like the powerhouse. So like something I kind of grew into. But everything I went through from like being kidnapped to the abuse to foster care to everything like that, when I became a senior, like I waited all year. You know what I mean? I was thinking about going for basketball or soccer, but I didn't have the resources. The important thing you said earlier was having mentors or somebody. I had my coach Russell, but he was focused on his business and things like that. So I was like still trying to figure out and shop around what I was going to do. And so I don't know if you remember, I initially signed my letter of intent to go to Weber State. And
Right.
so, yeah, when everything happened, so then I went up there to sign for classes and everything like that. And they told me, oh, well, we want you to wait till spring to get housing. And so I was like, well, I don't really have family or resources like that. And, I'm trying to get on my own and, fly, you know what I mean? So I kind of need these places. So that's when Coach Will and I kind of got on the phone. He said, I got somebody, he reached out to Snow and then kind of connected the dots basically. So that's kind of everything kind of gelled together and came together. And then the rest was history from there, you know what I mean? So it was a good perspective on that. And so, like I said, I think you and I kind of gelled off of that meeting and talked off of that. So it was good.
Well, and the thing about that too is like our recruiting was a little bit like, well, we kind of got to wait for guys sometimes, like we were one of the players like you that already had other opportunities, but we kind of knew looking at your situation that you might end up our way, so we wanted to keep those connections, right? And that was one of the things we really did. I think a lot of Snow is we tried to develop connections so that when things didn't work out or things didn't go the way the person knew, that there was always an opportunity at Snow. And sometimes that was more through the coaches than it was with the players because sometimes the players don't listen to everything we say. They're like, hey, let the kid know when this doesn't go through or that doesn't go through that here's a place to be.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember all the ins and outs, but I do remember like that was one of the big emphases is like make sure everybody knows there's always an opportunity at Snow, those
Yeah.
guys.
So as the recruit went on and I can't end up signing at Snow, and then obviously I drove down there that fall. I remember packing up my car and driving my Chevy Corsica. My school administrator drove me down there. Yeah, I don't know. Drove down there to Snow Village, and so we got there, and my JoJo Sawyer was there, and everybody. So we kind of built a bond. As things progressed, my freshman year, when you watched me play, even like through all the years at Snow, what would you say? What would you think my strengths were when I played up there?
Well, the number one thing that always stood out to me about you is your athleticism. Was like your ability to move and play in space, and your ability to play the ball. That was always the things that attracted to me. And then always like the little things we coach you like. I really liked your length. I was like, this would be a perfect corner where you can play with his length, and I can put him out on an island and do those type of things. But like, those are the top three things that stood out to me with is your athleticism, your length, and your ability to play space in the ball. And then also, I just really enjoyed your attitude. Like your personality was like one of those things that I enjoyed coaching you. And you've been playing ball and you were around sports long enough. There's always the kids that are good, but they're not fun to be around. You know what I mean? And then there's the ones who you enjoy being around, and it just makes everything so much better. And you always had like a great attitude and a great personality to play, to be around and to coach. And so like that was also like at the end of like a lot of my coaching years, you would always assess how the year went. And the years that you had players that you enjoyed coaching were the years that felt a little bit better. You know what I mean? So like I know we always talked about your personality and being enjoyed being around you. as a player.
Yeah, thanks for those insights, man. Like I said, I enjoyed being in y'all. Y'all made it easy. You know what I'm saying? Like I was always the person that I match people's energies, right? So when people were always,
Yeah,
very respectful, I'm respectful. You treat me right, I'm gonna treat you great. That's just how the mentality was, because that's how I was raised in Nigeria. So, but all the things I went through in middle school, like being bullied and isolated in classroom, just kind of changed my whole perspective about the people. So I started kind of lashing out on those people. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's just kind of how that was. And so coming to Sword, I know I got recruited as an athlete. And so we
yeah,
talked about playing corner and things like that. Well, because I remember me coming to athlete, and I wanted to play both, and I felt like I could do both. So basically, what Travis
yes.
Hunter is doing right now, I wish I could have did back then, because that's taking what I did. I played DB and then switched over, played 1 year receiver. I wish I could have played both, because I had so much energy let out. So being recruited as an athlete, what was the thinking behind recruiting me as an athlete? Was it because of the length and size of things you talked about now, you coming as a DB?
I think there's always like the one thing I think a lot like in college staffs, there's the offense and the defensive competition. So you have your offensive coaches that want players and defensive coaches that want players. And every once in a while there's players that there's a competition for and who they want. And so it really comes down to who can get them on the field the fastest. You know what I mean? So like I learned that a little bit of that when I went to Utah as a graduate assistant. You recruit players for what they're capable. You recruit football players and then you find a place for them to play, right? And we don't want good players sitting on the sideline, so like we're gonna find a spot for them. I don't know if we were as versed. I think the limitations of playing both ways on players, kind of jumping into another subject, is sometimes maybe we just weren't as good at finding ways to play people both ways. How we structured things, like we wanted to be able to have our guys teach them this, or maybe we just didn't have enough experience to be able to do that as coaches at that point. Like now, I think it would be easy to do, but when I was younger, I'm like, I just want these guys for this.
Yeah,
And so I think a lot of it, like when we recruit someone as an athlete, it's like finding the best place to get them on the field. And then the transition from high, like you were so raw as a player on the football side of things. Like we didn't necessarily know how you were going to pan out and grow. And football is the sport that you don't like time and perseverance determine success in football, right?
yeah,
And
most
so,
definitely.
like, we don't know if like a 12-year-old's good at football. Like, we can see they're good right then, but by the time they're 16, we don't know. And there's so many kids like you that develop more in like the 17, 18, 19, 20 years than you did when you were 14 and 15, right? And so, like, part of that is like, all right, what's he gonna be? And we were humble enough to know that we couldn't determine if you were gonna be the greatest DB or the greatest wide receiver. We were like, all right, which one is it gonna be? So that's why I mean, in my perspective, again, everybody has their own opinion. Man, we're talking about, man, 15 years ago, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so what I remember is like, all right, let's see where he fits and get him on the field as soon as we can.
yeah. And then kind of going into that. So obviously freshman year, when I played defensive back, what were your thoughts about that, about me playing DB that freshman year, if you
What I
remember?
wanted. I wasn't in charge of the DBs at that time. I think 2009, that was Justin, Coach DeCall, right?
Coach DeCall, yep. Coach DeCall was the defensive.
And so as a recruiting coordinator, I liked your size and your length. And so like that's the kind of guy I wanted on the field because like it's easier to recover with someone who has length and size than it is with someone who doesn't. Right. And so like if you make a mistake, it's easier for you to recover. And I loved your energy. But it was one of those transition periods for you, like learning how to do it and learning with a new coach and new staff. And so I think if I remember correctly, you were always kind of like the fifth DB out of the four. So you were rotating in quite a bit and playing quite a
Yep,
bit. And we're always rotating, but we always played so many, you know what I mean? And so like we just, as long as you were healthy, you were rotating.
yeah.
Like I said, I loved everything about like your potential. It was a matter of giving you enough reps to actually be seasoned enough to do it.
Yeah, because like I said, I remember, like I said, you guys gave me opportunities for everything. I was like the gunner on punt. I was, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
rotating DB, just getting on the field. What I mean? I even remember in the DB drills, coach to call like, man, like if you want to go safety, you know what I'm saying? Because you always talk about my ball hawk skills. I'm a defensive guy first. You know what I mean? That's how my mentality always works. And so I was like, oh, like, what I mean? But at the time, I didn't. And now, like looking back at it, I felt like I missed out on I'm not necessarily saying missed my blessing out, but I felt like I should have stayed at DB, but
Mhm.
it's a transition over. But like I said, I was starting to kind of learn the game as a DB because I didn't really play football like that. Nobody really taught me the game in the sense of like, hey, X, Y, and Z, X, O, watch film like that in high school because we didn't have none of that. And so like something I was just learning on the fly. I just like you said, just raw, like, go tackle somebody. Okay, let's go. Go make a tackle. You know what I mean? So going into that year when I switched to receiver, what was your thoughts about when I switched over to offense and played receiver?
Well, like I wasn't super fired up about it because I was like, let's play DB, man. We just put in this time. But again, I was young. Um, like I said, I might have been on my fourth or fifth year, right around there, like second year at Snow, third year at Snow. What year was it? 10 that you transitioned? What was the year that you
Yeah,
transitioned?
it was like yeah, between 10. So we left
So I
at
think that's when I left,
yeah,
right? So like I was there in 2009 and I left to Utah in 10. And then so I wasn't there for when you got switched.
yeah.
I know we always had talked about it, and I was always like, "No, let's play him on deep." That was always my opinion. My voice was to keep you on
That
defense.
was that was '09. I apologize. Yeah, '09 was when I switched over because I got a YO at 10.
And so like I said, what I recall, right? The numbers a long those are a long time ago. What I recall is like my piece and my point was always like, let's keep them on defense. But also we were trying to build the whole team. Because when we were Snow, we were always right there on the edge of playing for the national
And
championship.
national
Right.
championship. Yes.
So like I have to speak out of like what our purposes was. And it was always about like, all right, if DJ's here, but if he could help us more here, that's where he's gonna go. And it wasn't just for you, that was for every player. So because also we always took like our D linemen and we just switch them over to O line if they weren't playing on defense, or if they could do, one of the things we struggled at Snow was recruiting wide receivers sometimes, was getting those higher caliber guys, especially the years that you were there, and finding a guy who could stretch the field sometimes and go get a football that had ball skills. Finding a guy with ball skills was hard to find sometimes. And so if I'm gonna spitball, um, I know it might have been above my pay grade while you got switched at that time. I wasn't the OC or the DC
Yeah.
or the head coach. So I know my opinion was keep you on defense, but I know that Coach Hughes was always looking for guys to stretch the field. And that's probably what he watched you and was like, all right, this guy can stretch the field. Let's throw the ball to this guy.
Yeah. And that was just kind of like beautiful how everything kind of just played out. Well, thanks for your insights and your
Was
perspective.
that was that the year too? We had Mozzie. Didn't we have you
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Mozzie there together?
Yep.
And
So
so it kind
Ozzie
of we
came,
created
yeah, because he redshirted that freshman year, and then he played the 2 years. So I played the first year, and then I redshirted. Then we played together that second year. So I was X, he was Z, and then so that's kind of everything happened. Then we had Dontre played F, and then we had Cam Webb, a couple other receivers that came in there and rotated in. That's when we needed a break.
pretty deadly. It's a pretty deadly group right there. Because I think
Yeah.
I remember all those guys went on to play ball
Yep. Yep.
next level.
All of us. Yeah. Most definitely, for sure. Yeah. So within those 2 years, what did you see? What did you see me? What growth did you see within me in those 2 years that I spent up there, 2.5 years? And then did you see me? What things did you see me work on and off the field as well too?
Well, the greatest thing that I remember about you is like, again, understanding your background, where you came from and what had occurred in your life. You had every excuse to say, like, the world's against me. Right. And your greatest attribute is you were more forward thinking. I like to call it like, I don't like to describe positive thinking as like a rah rah cheerleader type guy. I like to describe positive thinking as a solution finder, that when you see the world, you see what you want, you see the path forward, not necessarily all the obstacles that are keeping you back. And your greatest attribute has always been your ability to see the path forward, even if it's just one step. You might not know where it's going to end up, but you were always really good at not allowing the negativity to drag you down. And I was always impressed with that because there was a lot of kids we recruited that struggled with that. It took me years to get people to think, like, to see the solution, and you already have that. Like, you were always like, oh, well, what can we do? To the point where we were doing stuff we'd never done before, like the whole like getting you emancipated, like to be your own man and not be beholden to anybody, and to do all that stuff. We've never done that with anybody else. But you were always talking about, what can I do? Right. I think that contributes to every aspect of your success and everything. Like, we could talk about your progression. Like, every time you learned something, you always applied it because you could see how it was going to help you get where you wanted to go. And so for a long, like, that's kind of a long winded way of saying your greatest attributes is your ability to see the next step or to trust the next step and not worry about the obstacles, because there's always been obstacles in your life. And maybe because you had such a struggle early on in life, you learned that it could always be better, right? Like, you knew that if you just kept going, that it was going to be better. And maybe you learned that from those experiences. I was always impressed with that because I did work with juvenile delinquents who could never see the path. They only saw the obstacles and they were just stuck in a rut, in this negativity, and couldn't get out. But I was always impressed with your ability to see the next step. if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And thanks for your perspective. And I think from my perspective, my standpoint was, like you said, all the things that I went through kind of forged my path to kind of show me like the things that I could do. You know what I mean? And I wanted it so bad because I wanted to change my life and change other people's lives because of perspective. And it's something that I promised my mom because like I said, most people don't realize that I spent 10 years with my mom in Nigeria. So when I went through foster care, I didn't get to talk to my mom for 5 years. And then I got kidnapped, taken back to Nigeria, left there with no passport, all this stuff. And then that's when I found out my mom had passed away. So I had talked to my mom one time in third grade, and I can still remember the phone call. So I made
Uh-huh.
a promise to her that I'll do something in my life that I won't be statistic. So that's to me like that was just something I kept ingrained in my mind with between her and my grandfather. So that's a promise that I held that despite anything that I keep pushing forward, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people don't have that mentality. It's always like something could happen to people, but they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, life is inevitable, right? Things happen. You have losses, you have defeats, you have setbacks, you have all these things, but people don't realize that you could always see the light at the end of the tunnel. For instance, like an analogy I can say is like when a train goes through a tunnel, when it's dark in there, the train doesn't stop, right? You still trust the process. The train's going to get where you need to get to. Eventually, it comes out and there's light outside. So to me, like I felt like my childhood, I was going through a dark time, and yeah, it was hard for me at the time. But I felt like giving up most times. But I was like, you know what? Like I'm always come out on top, and I got to do something. And I'm the person that has to break that barrier. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where my mentality came from. And so
Well, that and again, if we're talking about attributes to help people like to develop and grow, and one of the things that I work with people on now is the whole fact what you just described is what pulled you through that tunnel was that goal and that promise, right? Like you had this purpose. You were driven by a purpose and you never buried like even though life and we're all human and we all have our down moments, you never forgot that purpose. Right. And that purpose guided you through. And that's the same for all of us, like for any person. If we have a goal and a purpose, that's what pulls us through the tough times, right? If and again, connecting to something greater than ourselves. Like that promise was for somebody else. That was for your family, for your legacy, for your mom, right? And it's easy to quit when it's just about us. But if our purpose is attached to something more than ourselves, then it pulls us through those dark times. And you were a good example of that. Even though maybe you didn't understand exactly, like most of us when we're young, we don't really understand what pulls us through things till when we get older and we kind of have a little more perspective. Having that purpose and having that drive and that goal is what pulls people through those tough
yeah,
times.
and I think that kinda helped me out because even, like, now, I can tell you, I can remember the back of my head. I remember being a kid in Nigeria growing up, and we didn't have a lot of resources, and when people talk about the bottom, like, my bottom was way below other people's bottom, you know what I mean? So third world country, poverty is a different thing, so that's how I grew up, but I used to remember my grandfather and my mom used to tell me one thing. They say, "Every day we wake up with a chance and a choice. The choice we make dictate the outcome of our lives," you know what I'm saying? So you can have a bad day, but you made choices, you know what I'm saying, to better yourself. So that's kind of my mindset. So it was like amnesia, it was like it was like amnesia when I go through something. Okay, yeah, this happened. Okay, cool, it's bad, but we're gonna get over it. You know what I mean? And eventually, when he gets over it, it's gonna get better and whatnot. So that's how my mentality kind of came from. And I think those people, my mom, my grandfather, played that intricate part in that success because I always carried that with me everywhere I went, even to this day. You know what I mean? I always, do everything to uphold the promise I kept to them. You know what I mean? Like you said, just motivated to kind of do something for somebody else. And I think my message to people will be find something you love or find something you value or find something that you were willing to give your all to and stick to that and bite on that. You know what I mean? I think that's what kind of helped me throughout snow and whatnot. So yeah, thanks for your perspective. And so kind of going to that, I was going to ask you, at what point did you feel like I matured? Was there a moment you was like, "Oh, man, this kid really matured and kinda became somebody?"
I think the maturity was actually, I think you came to snow already have experienced so many things and had your issues and your maturity in dealing with it. I think you came ready for the moment at snow, if that makes sense. Right. Like I didn't feel like there was a mature, I think, about halfway through, I felt like you were more focused on what you could accomplish, but I felt like you came pretty prepared, ready to do what you needed to do. Again, I measure maturity different than other people do too. Like
Yeah.
maturity to me of knowing everything and not being like seasoned by experience. I think maturity is like knowing that work is going to be needed to be done and being willing to do that work, right? And not and allowing to make you allow yourself to make decisions for your goal and not be swayed by what might be fun and exciting in the moment, right? I thought you always did a good job of making decisions about your goal, right? And so like I felt your life up to that point I think you were a little bit more mature than most kids. You know what I mean? And I think by the time you got to us, you were just looking for the opportunity to accomplish your goals. And so like everything you were learning at that time was like just like bullets in the gun, tools in the tool shed. And it was almost like everything happened for a reason, like perfectly for you as far as like your readiness for that opportunity. Because there's a lot of kids who come into snow and they flunk out that first year and are gone
Yeah.
because they don't
Yeah.
know what to do with that freedom. And you definitely didn't do that, right? Did you struggle a little bit here and there? Yeah, but that's just because you're learning and growing, right? And so maturity wise, I thought emotionally you had matured a lot more than most kids at that time, at that point. Now you're just dealing with the different sets of circumstances. Like instead of dealing with some of those dark things you dealt with early on, now we're dealing with getting our assignments in on time and going to class on time and like learning the process of the institution, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so
Most
like
definitely.
that's not necessarily um though that can be hard for some people. And it is more difficult for others based on how they grow up. But I felt like you were prepared to take it on and learn from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks for those insights. It's a good perspective to have, and thanks for your words, your kind words. So I was going to kind of correlate to, we talked a little bit earlier. Some of my favorite memories, obviously, were like the Sunday night, late night check-ins, right? So we have to Sunday night, you got to be in the hall, checked in, make sure all the players in town so we can get ready for school and practice and all that. So what was the importance of those relationships and when we had those and just that bond we kind of created?
Well, the Sunday night meetings were really that was really to make sure we were taking care of you guys, right? Because we are out of town. Everybody left. When they could leave, they left for the
Yes.
weekend, right? And we were just close enough to like Provo and Salt Lake and Ogden that you could just get out and get up there and be there for the night. We did that more like I know when I was the head coach of Snow, I did that. I continued that process because I wanted to make sure my guys were taken care of, that they were home. We touched base. You guys knew we cared about you, and those things were. It was meant to be a meeting and a check-in, but they always morphed into like cool conversations, hanging out with the guys, and then going. And then sometimes we'd have food, sometimes we didn't. Like it just morphed into like some of the stuff that I know, particularly during fall camp, we'd always have a meal attached to it, right? But it just was one of those things that we did more to make sure you guys knew we cared about you, right? And that we were keeping tabs of you. And people can look at that differently, right?
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
oh,
That's
coach
a
is like, this is
pressure.
all over me. But really, we did it to make sure, we had a couple kids getting car wrecks, driving back fast in the early morning. And so we're like, well, what can we do to make sure everybody's doing what they need to do to be safe? And that we have everybody here in a situation where they can be successful in class and be here at practice and accomplish the goals they wanted. And so we're like, all right, we're going to do these Sunday night meetings so that they know to be back, but also that to also show that we care about them and that this is how you're successful, to establish a routine of success. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it does. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, I think you guys did a great job. Like for me at the time, like you said, perspective is everything. You know what I mean? Some people see it as, oh, what coach isn't doing too much, but me, like, I was like, okay, like we got this bond, a group of individuals come in there, taking it, we're laughing, and goofing, our clowning. Now, so we got important reminders, for practice throughout the week or school, etc. So it's kind of good to kind of bring the whole team together. You know what I mean? We used to talk about once a Badger, always a Badger, kind of bring the whole, crew together. So it's something that kind of rolled along. So,
Well, and it helps create focus too, right?
yeah,
Like touch points. If
yeah.
we're doing something consistently over and over and over again, and we're able to talk about things that bring everybody back to their purpose, because most of us are good people and we want to accomplish our goals. If we don't accomplish our goals, it's probably because we just forgot or lost ourselves on the path. And like those little touch points are what help keep us on the path.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And then the other thing I was going to touch on is I don't know if you remember the car accident that I had in. You remember that one? Were you there for that one?
I do remember. Yep.
What was your
I
thoughts
remember
about
it.
that?
I mean, we're always concerned. We're just making sure everybody's okay.
Yeah,
What I recall, I don't remember every detail about it. But I just remember I'm like, I hope he's okay. And I hope he can keep doing what he wants to do. And I remember thinking, I'm like, man, this guy's got a lot going on. There's always something. You know what I mean? Because I heard your story. And one thing I hope you realize is we never used your past experiences against you or for you. You know what I mean? Like we kept you the same standard, right?
yeah, uh-huh,
And but we were very aware of like the things you'd gone through and we wanted to make sure and Coach DeCall always was talking about let's take care of DJ. What do we got to do to take care of DJ? And so that's one thing I do remember. He was always really concerned about you guys, and then knowing your situation, knowing that you didn't have like family support, like we were your family support. I know he did a little extra to make sure of that. And whenever you guys, like, I don't know if you guys, coaches always say this is coach speak, but I feel like at Snow, we try to emulate it. Like you guys were our family, and we thought of you guys as our family. And we were more concerned about you as a person when things like that happen than you were as a player. The player thing was always going to be there, but we want to make sure you're okay physically. And the feeling I remember the most is like, man, I hope he's okay. And I hope this doesn't like derail him. Cause sometimes when you get in those accidents and then you get injured, and you can't play as much as you want to in the next little bit. There's a lot of kids I've seen that have like fallen off the deep end because of just a little hiccup like that. So luckily that didn't happen.
Yeah, and yeah, when that joint, but like I said, it was I guess you can call, I guess, newfound motivation because, it's a whole, I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast, but it's a whole nother conversation. But like the things I saw when the accident happened, everything like that, my mom was telling me, hey, like it wasn't my time to go yet. You know what I mean? So for me, like it was just kind of lit a fire in me. You know what I mean? I don't know if you remember, I came back. That was the year I was redshirt, and then I came back that sophomore year and had to switch to receiver and then kind of hone in, learn the whole offense and turn everything in.
Yeah.
Came in to just start balling, you know what I mean? And so to me, like, especially scout team, I took off on scout team. I was like, read the play cards and just start routing all the DBs up. Coach DeGar, he used to get mad, like, how y'all know to play? And DJ routing y'all up. So I think that was for me, it was just like newfound motivation to kind of just keep pushing forward, you know what I mean? And so it was like something like I was like, man, my window's checking out because it felt like high school because I waited till like my senior year to kind of he was talking about the signing contract to figure out where I was going to go to school. So it felt like, man, like I wish Snow was 4 years. I'm not going to lie to you, but it was like, you got 2 years to do the best you can. So I played DB my freshman year, then switched over to receivers. Like, okay, you have to reach redshirt because you got all the receivers on the roster. I was like, okay, fine. So I went ham during that spring camp, and then fall, I switched over to receiving. So I still came in and balled out and then ended up going to Wyoming after that 1 year. But
Mhm.
yeah, free insights. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's like I said, you went through like the process, like the learning process there. Like you said, you were raw physically. You were still learning what you're gonna be, and like the process that we set up at Snow and you experienced was, I think you're a good example of what good can come from, like a mutual respect, right? Like you listen to us as coach. You could have easily said, no, I'm doing this and that's what I'm going to do. But you accepted kind of like the process. Coach Hughes and Coach Colburn, those guys, they kind of saw that you could be really successful at wide receiver and get an opportunity um, at the next level, at a 4-year level. And that's kind of probably why the move was motivated. Like, again, I was the linebacker coach and recruiting coordinator. So all I got to say was, let's not do that. And they did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Most
I
definitely.
was like, wait a second. I recruited this dude. I want this guy to be on defense.
Yeah.
But like I said, we had a lot of really good coaches. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, Coach
English.
Coburn, I mean, was great establishing culture and getting people excited to play football. And then just good football minds like Coach Hughes is that guy's one of the best coaches that has ever gone through Snow.
Yeah.
And then Coach Sakal was really good. All his defenses were always performed really well, and he did a good job of putting people in the right spot. So, I mean, I look back and I'm like, there was a lot of really good coaches that rolled through there.
Yeah, it was, dude, it was coaches before their time. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. A lot of coaches and the things that we did now, even I think when Coach Hughes went with the Patriots, he has said something to a couple of people. He's like, yeah, like literally the same practice, how we structured practice in Snow was literally how it was in the league when he was coaching up there. You know what I mean? So I felt like all the coaches, him, Coach the Call, you guys were learning a lot, even Coach Mayfield. Mayfield and all of them, like, you know what I mean? Everybody was kind of before their time, just kind of implementing important. Like he says, the brotherhood that kind of built off the foundation that was poured. So, yeah. So now, kind of correlating to where you're at right now in life, how do you balance being a coach, a mentor, and a father?
Well, I think, how do I say this? I think it's gotten easier because as I've gotten older, it's all the same thing. Like being a coach, being a father, being a mentor, is I got to be the same guy with everybody. And so I've taken a step back from coaching to be more with my kids right now. So like that was one of my guiding motivations. Everybody goes through changes. Like I was all about football. I coached it for 24 years. I still love football. Like right now I took over the little league over here in Broken Arrow as like just to coach the coaches to help them coach the kids. Right. So like I spend like when I get done with you today, I'm going over to talk with coaches about how they can build their practices and things like that. Right. And so I still dabble in the football, but really I found that what I love most about football is the ability to help people grow and to have these conversations and to see them take it and put it in. So like I'm able to do that at all levels now. And so like the balance, I don't know if there's anything to balance anymore because I'm the same guy in all situations in my life. And so what that's done though is it's mellowed me out. Like when you first knew me, I was that yelling, screaming coach, that brand new, like getting after everybody. And now I'm a little more of the grandpa coach where it's like, hey, come over here, let's have a discussion. And so we go through our cycles, but I think the balancing comes from learning who you are as a person. And like, I think it's a misnomer to say you're going to balance it. I think you have to learn how to make it all one thing. Life gets stressful when you're like, here's my football version of me. Here's the dad part of me. Here's the social person of me. Here's my religious person. Like when you come to true knowledge or the wisdom of life tells you that that's all the one same person. And the stress goes away when you learn to be the same person in all aspects. I don't know if that answers your questions, but like to me, it's like I don't know if I balance things anymore more so than I just try to be the same guy in every
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. And so to kind of correlate to that, so would you say that's what kind of coaching has taught you, or could you add anything else you felt like coaching has taught you?
Definitely think coaching taught me that sinking time and effort into people is the greatest thing you can do. And yes, coaching taught me, like, I first got into coaching because I'm like, it was like, I knew I could help people, but it was motivated partly because I loved football, right? And I enjoyed that part of it. But like, the older I get, and the more I coach, and the more I'm able to be around people, the true joy of it comes from seeing people change and grow and become something more and so coaching definitely taught me that like it doesn't have to be just the football field that we have that influence on people. You can have that in your own family, you can have it, whatever social circles that you put yourself in, you have the ability to affect people the same way as you do as a coach. And I guess coaching taught me that you can do that everywhere. It's not just on the field.
Yeah, and thanks for those insights. Like I said, I'm glad, like I said, football, coaching, everything is a game of lessons, I mean, teaches a lot. So moving forward, what was your thoughts about when I transferred to Wyoming? Do you feel like I was ready for that step when I transferred to Wyoming? What was your overall thoughts about that?
I was excited for you because I felt like you came there and that was the reason why you come to Snow was to get that opportunity to move forward. I was excited for you to get the Division 1 offer to go to Wyoming. Like other than I wasn't sure how it was all going to work out because I think you and I think Mozzie came the next year because
Yeah,
you guys both went to Wyoming, right?
yeah, yeah,
I thought it was just a great connection. I thought it would be a good fit football wise, but like the environment's way different out there too. And so I was just excited that you got that Division 1 scholarship and were able to keep going on and have that opportunity. And maybe you get a chance to move back over to DB when you went there, but that didn't happen.
yeah. So when I left, what did you hope that I carry with me from my transition from Snow to Wyoming when I went up there those 2 years?
I would just hope that with all the kids, our hope was that they would that they were equipped with the skills to be successful. That we had structured a system that you were going to be used to what was coming. That it wouldn't be a surprise and a shock. That you could hit the ground running. Football, especially when you get into college football and the NFL, there's so many great players. There's so many great things. It's like, are you capable? Like the difference is the people who can stick to it. And then once you get to the NFL, it's a little bit like the lottery. Like everything's got to roll the right way, right? Because it's so few of you actually get to go participate in that. Like just getting to a camp is like hard. It's like getting struck by lightning just to get to go to a camp in the NFL. So our hope was that you were prepared. That when you left, you're like, you know what, those guys at Snow knew what they were doing, and they prepared us to be able to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great qualities to kind of think about it. So I think I did take a lot of that, and I took all like the resiliency, the perseverance, the hard work, the dedication, like all these words, I can keep rambling on a bunch of words. And I think, and the brotherhood, the fellowship, like I said, I kind of carried that with me. That's why I said sometimes I wish Snow was a 4-year institution because that's when I felt like at Snow I found myself, like I was starting to try to figure out who I was and trying to find my identity and kind of insert myself in life and trying to figure out where I was going to head. But Snow kind of brought, I came in as a young boy, but I grew into a man when I left Snow. I felt like, because the things we went through at Snow, and like the things we had to work with, it's kind of
Mhm.
perspective a lot. And it's like, man, like you got to actually work for what you have, you know what I mean, what you want. And so it kind of taught me a lot. So
Well,
I take,
and it was super competitive down there, right?
yeah,
every dude that came down there could play ball. And so like you had to earn your spot every day. So I think that's one of the things I loved most about snow is like you had to have the right attitude to make it. But if you made it through snow, we used to always say, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Most
Right.
definitely.
So, and that was kind of our mindset that we always shared with people.
Yeah. So looking back now overall, after spending all these years at Snow, what would you say you were most proud of for all these years you spent at Snow?
I mean, I just feel like an old dad now, like an old grandpa. I do a little Facebook stalking on all these guys and see all you guys doing all this cool stuff and just grown into just good men, you know? I think the thing that makes a coach more proud of anything is seeing all the former players and the positive contributions they make in society.
Yeah.
Cause you're like, you know, even though I'm not naive to think that we affected everybody in the same way, and there were probably some relationships where I could have done a better job, but like just being able to see people grow and have their families and be good men is the most rewarding part of coaching. Is
Yeah.
like, you know, just to be able like, I don't know if you ever knew Ivan King. He came a couple years after you.
So,
But he played DB in like 14. And I came out here to Broken Arrow and he was out here coaching high school playing arena ball out here. And I said, well, come with me out here. And I got a chance to coach with him out here and be around with him like that. And that was one of the most fun experiences I've had was coaching with him just as a former player
yeah.
um, and getting on that same. So like little things like that. Like I don't know how to. I don't. There's not one big thing, but you know, little things like seeing a former player with his kids, or seeing a former player be successful, or coaching with them. Like just those little experiences are awesome. I guess I'm an old man now. I just like to see the good stuff.
The window shot. Yeah. No worries, man. So what do you miss most about coaching at Snow?
Well, the simplicity of it. Like I felt like football's so different now, and that's a whole other topic of
Yeah.
discussion.
Yes.
But back then it was about the ball and about being good at football and like trying to develop you. Like we put you guys in this system where everybody's a good player. Whoever's good is going to rise to the top. And it was just true and pure and simple. That's what I love. Like you show up, you did the work, you got rewarded for it. And like we didn't have to talk all this politics or all these little things that go along with it now. Like it was just show up and play ball. You know, that's what I miss. And I miss the relationships with the players and the coaches. Like you said, it was a unique place where you got to connect with players. Like you recruited the players down, you got connected to them, and then the coaches themselves. Like that was the most enjoyable time I had as a coach with my fellow coaches and with my players.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So, are there any stories or any games that you feel like you'll never forget?
Well, I don't know. Like games kind of all kind of go through, and there's one game. I don't think it was your guys' year, but there was one game where we played Glendale down at Glendale, and we had just given up a touchdown with like 22 seconds left on the board. Actually, two games at Glendale that were like this. And this might have been one of your years where we returned the kickoff back for the touchdown and win it with like 20 seconds left. And then like 3 years later, we go back down to Glendale and they're driving and we're up by 1 point and they're driving and they're about to score. They go to kick the field goal and we block the field goal on the
Blocked it.
last second
Yeah.
to win the
Yeah.
game. And
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
we seemed like we were really good at blocking kicks. Like
That
I
was
don't know if it was
crazy,
just the
man.
way Coburn and the call kind of set up the defense and how, but everybody was really passionate about blocking kicks back then. But we won a couple of games on blocking kicks. So I can't remember exact years. Like it's all just mushed together.
No.
But I remember two games at Glendale. And then I remember one game in Scottsdale where we had the lightning delay. That might have been close to your time, but we had to go in. And I remember I was never afraid of lightning until that night because like it struck the baseball field. And I'm like, what the heck? I don't know. There's so many. Like it's starting to pop in. Like I could probably list like
Yeah.
50
It's all.
games.
Yeah. No, I think ours.
What about you? What
No, I
about you?
think I
What's
was
your
like that
greatest
first.
memory?
My greatest memory probably that freshman year when I mean I was kind of it's not a memory, but no the Rio Tinto when we played at Rio Tinto and
Oh, yeah.
when they threw the ball to Tyson Church. Initially, Coach
Okay.
Hughes came up to me after the game. He's like, DJ, you was like wide open because Quinn threw the ball to a running back. What's the name? Number 33, Tyson.
Yeah,
So
true.
yeah, Tyson Church. So he kind of made a couple of people miss and got in the end zone. So we won the Rio Tinto Stadium, and I jump in the air like I punched it because man, like I was so excited because that freshman year, I don't know if you remember, we were playing for the national championship against Butler, and we had blocked that field goal. But one of the DBs touched it and then recovered the end zone to win the national championship again. And I was so hot about that. I was like, man, freshman year would have got a ring
Wow.
and everything. So then that second year when we played at the Rio Tinto, and I felt like I was going off that game, that was kind of like I had to catch that. I didn't know how I made the catch. Like I slid like I was sliding home, like caught it like underneath my mitts, but I had no thumb at the time. So like I had to catch it like this and I slid under it. So that was like my thing. And then when the Rio Tinto Stadium was like the biggest thing. So to me, like just playing in that stadium, that environment, and then like you said, the bus trips to like Arizona and playing Pima and Scottsdale, all these schools was like that was kind of my big best memories of kind of playing up there at Snow. So it was like something
Oh,
that
yeah.
just kind of grew over time, just like the bond and fellowship with people and the coaches. So it was something
Yeah.
that kind of built over time. So that was great.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
blocked out that national championship loss. That one hurts the heart, brother. To lose the way we lost that one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you do now that life, what does life look like for you now that you're obviously not coaching?
Well, like I said, it's busy. I got 4 kids, and so I feel like a bus driver a lot of the time where I'm just driving my kids. My oldest plays tennis, my boy plays football and lacrosse, my 3rd youngest daughter plays softball, so I'm just taking them to their activities, and then, like I said, I'm helping out the little league football right now, like, trying to get all them coaches coached up, or doing my best to help them to coach the young ones up, and then I volunteer a lot at my church, and so, like, I wake up and I get going, and then when it's time to sleep, it's time to sleep, but the day is full, my friend. It's
Yeah.
probably more full now that I'm not coaching, just more stuff, you know?
Yeah. More stuff.
But I mean, I miss coaching. I kind of lost, like, a little bit of, like, the desire to coach football the last couple of years just because of all the changes, you know? Like you said, I love football for what it was, is like the team sport that helped people grow and become what they're supposed to become, and I think a little bit of that's getting lost with the way things are going, you know?
Structured.
You
Yeah.
know, I remember I was recruiting a kid at a Division II school, and the whole conversation was, "How are you going to get my kid to the NFL?" And I'm like, "Well, one, I'm recruiting you to a D2. You're probably not going to the NFL. But also, like, that's not my job. That's your job. You know, all the guys who made it the NFL were specially talented. Like, you think of all those guys we played with at Snow that went to the NFL. Like, we knew they were going to the NFL. Like we didn't do anything to help them go to the NFL. We just gave them the opportunity to play football,
Wallet.
right?"
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like maybe I shouldn't say this as a coach, but I felt like people who are uniquely like blessed to play at that level, they earn that on their own, if that makes sense. They worked for it. And like all we do as coaches is provide opportunities. Like the players take advantage of the opportunity. Right. And so like I kind of lost my love of football in the recruiting process when every recruiting was like, what you gonna do for my son? What are you gonna do for this? I'm like, well, I'm gonna let him play football. That's what I'm gonna do. Like you gotta take care of all that other stuff,
Yeah.
you know? And so it started a little bit after COVID. I started just, I don't know. COVID was a good thing to point, like you start reassessing what you're doing and why you're doing it. I started being a little more family oriented. Like I have 3 girls, so I've gotten a lot
Yeah.
softer as the years have gone by.
Yeah. Girls would do that too.
So I think that's kind of like, I've become a lot more family and service oriented these last couple of years as opposed to when I was first coaching.
And so with kind of the transition to what you're doing now, do you feel like your definition of success has changed over the years? Or how much
No, I don't. I think success is just like, are you affecting people in a positive way? And are you coming to work to make someone else's life better? Right. I think when you start thinking you know everything is when it's time for a change for you. But I think my definition of success has grown to where it's not just on the football field and with my players, but it's with everybody I come in contact with. I know if there's a change, you have an opportunity to affect everybody in a positive way in every interaction. And I guess my focus has gone from just my small football focus to now it's everybody I have a chance to touch. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. So I was gonna say, so what legacy do you hope to leave to the players that you've coached?
I hope as I get older, I hope they just know that I was in it for them. Like everything I said, even if I was yelling and screaming at them, I was motivated for them to be the best they could be. I want people to think I was always about doing what's right for everybody involved. That makes might be a little simplistic, but I want everybody to walk away knowing that I was never motivated for selfish desires. It was motivated for them and motivated for them to be what they could become.
See, that's definitely a great answer for sure. So then the other thing I was going to ask is, if one of your former players were listening to this podcast right now and struggling with life right now, what would you want to tell them?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess there's perspective. There's a couple of players I wish I would have been a little bit better with, and how I carried myself. Or, when I was younger, you always regret the way you were when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things you wish you could take backwards, you wish you could take back. But I think when someone's struggling, is when we talked about it earlier in this podcast, is like being see the path forward, is like we are never stuck, and being human beings, we have the ability to make you, and you nailed it, your grandpa and your mom taught you there's a chance and a choice, right? Everything is an opportunity to show who you're going to become. Everything you go through, good, bad, ugly, is an opportunity to show everybody around you the person you want to be. Right. And I would hope that whenever we start to feel a little bit down or we're struggling, it's probably because we're not seeing outside of ourselves. Is to broaden your perspective, see the path forward, and just start walking towards it, and things will get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for those insights. And I think just kind of add to what you said, we're talking about with chance and choices. The story I always tell kids when I speak to kids now, obviously I work with kids at a high school and I do real estate as well. And so when I speak to kids, I don't know, do you know the story of two sons of an alcoholic father? Have you heard the story?
Maybe not the title. Maybe I know it. Not
Might
sure.
might be the same perspective, like different. You might have heard it a little bit different, but like I kind of shared this with kids, and so they kind of had to what you said. So there's two sons. They had an alcoholic father. He had married his wife, but he was very alcoholic, very abusive. And so as the boys, he had two twin boys, and as the twin boys grew older, so they all became their own young men. So they all married and had their own lives as well too. And so one day, some random person was like, "Hey, let's do an interview. Let's interview these two boys." And so they pulled the boys into two different rooms, and so they pulled the son. That's one son became a Fortune 500 business owner, loved his family, took care of everything he had basically. So they went in the room and asked him, "Hey, son, like, why are you the way you are?" He said, I am the way I am because of my father, right? So they went in the other room and asked the other son became an alcoholic and did the same thing his father did and say, "Hey, son, why are you the way you are?" He said, "I am the way because of my father." But all in all, at the end of the day, they came back as all about perspective. The son that became a Fortune 500 business owner and loved his wife and everything like that saw the example of his father being very abusive and said, "Hey, that's not what I want to be like. I want to be the complete opposite." So he changed his life and kind of did something completely different. And then the son became an alcoholic. He didn't play the victim and started saying, "Oh, well, yeah, my father's an alcoholic, so I'm gonna do the same thing too," type of thing. But life is all about perspective. You know what I mean? So when the eggs you're given, sometimes you're given bad cards. You know what I mean? But even like in the game of spades, you can be given one spade, but if you play it right, you can win multiple bucks in that game of life. And that's why I felt like my life was predicated on because all the cards I dealt with, I still played my hands right to kind of get out of the situation I got to. Because I shouldn't even be here talking to you today. The car accident, to the foster care, the kidnapping, like everything I went through. But it was all about perspective for me. Like I say, hey, okay, it might not be great today, but one day, I'll live to tell it and kind of have that be the blueprint for somebody else to kind of be successful. So I kind of share that when I talk to kids and tell them, hey, like, things might not be great today, but, eventually it will get better. Things will subside. If you stub your toe, it hurts, right off the bat, but eventually the pain goes away, right? But you got to just stick the course and do the remedy, which you have to take care of. So that's kind of add insights to what you're saying to the players. I'll tell them the same thing. Life is all about perspective. You know what I mean? Look always on the brighter side. It might not be good today, but eventually it will get better. Even the sun comes out on a rainy day, right? So if that,
Like learning how to just keep pushing no matter how you feel is one of the greatest successful skills you can develop, right?
yeah,
And it's like bad things happen, but just stick to the goal and the purpose, and it all works out.
yeah, most definitely. So all in all, like I said, as we start kind of getting to closing, I was going to ask you, what does beneath the surface mean to you?
Getting to the a purpose and the intent on why we act, why we do what we do, is whatever is underneath us is what motivates us. And like sometimes people make the same choice but might have a different purpose or different intent. And I think whatever is underneath us is like our experiences that motivate us to move forward.
Yeah. Okay. So what years from now, when people remember Coach Maughan, what do you hope they remember you most most for?
Like I hope it's not like me some of the choice words we've had here and there. You know what I mean? I hope they remember more than just the yelling and the getting after them. I think I want them to remember that everything that you do, you need to do with everything you got, right? Like if we're gonna do something, be all in and do it. And I hope like my kids and my players learn that whatever we engage in, let's make sure we do everything we got to be as good as we can be. And that nothing is ever final, nothing is fatal. Like there's always a chance to move forward. Everything's just an opportunity to prove who we are.
Most definitely. Yeah, great answer. Great insights. I love that, man. Thank you. Do you have anything else? Is there anything else that we didn't talk about in this podcast you feel like our listeners or other former players or coaches, anybody that they should hear?
No, I mean, I thought I didn't have any expectations, man. I just wanted to have a nice talk with a former player. So
Of course, man.
I thought it was awesome and it would be cool. Like I need to start listening to this podcast so I can start like
Yeah.
I listened once you said I started trying to look for it. But I'm like, if I need to start paying attention to see who's on so I can maybe hear from some other players and some other kids and some other coaches.
Yeah.
I think this is a cool thing you're doing, brother.
Yeah, thank you, man. And so, like, I know I always tell people don't realize this. I was going to give you your flowers, right? To kind of tell you thank you, first and foremost for believing in me, for sticking by me. Like I said, I told you, I remember down my Chevrolet course to go to the stadium and you coming out there, you know what I mean? Talking to me.
Yeah,
I remember that walking in the stadium, kind of giving me a little walk through the locker room underneath the stadium and everything. And just kind of being so kind and just kind of being there, kind of creating that brotherly bond. And so I was going to tell you first and foremost, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you did for me. I know some other players say the same thing as well, and it takes somebody to kind of go through something and kind of have motivation to kind of help others, which you did. You made an impact in my life, and to this day, you know what I mean? And so I want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I'm giving you your flowers, not a quarter. You did a great job. I know you say you, but you did a great job, throughout the years. And so I want to kind of continue that bond we've had, from Snow. We always say, once a Badger, always a Badger. You know what I mean?
always.
On one, up on the one, always.
Yeah, there it is. It's stuck. It's ingrained in us, isn't it?
It's ingrained up on the one, always. Always remember that. You know what I mean? So I always tell you, thank you. You know what I mean? So if there's anything further to do, everybody, this is why we go beneath the surface, to go beneath the surface and talk about the stories that people don't normally see. So without further ado, thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned. And so if this story shared to touch your heart, please share with somebody that needs to hear it too. Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Thanks, DJ.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Beneath the Surface. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or inspired you, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, left a review, and shared this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps these stories reach someone who may need hope today. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, every person has a story. There's always more beneath the surface. I'm DJ Lester. I'll see you on the next episode.